Hey everybody, I'm a member of Al-Anon. My name's Aaron Jacks. My home group is the One Purpose Al-Anon Family Group in Charlotte, North Carolina. We meet on Thursday nights at 8, study a step each week, a tradition on the fourth Thursday of the month, and a concept when there's a fifth Thursday, and I absolutely love my home group. We're still doing Zoom, online, plus hybrid in person, so if anybody's interested, we'd love to see you online. I'll be happy to give you the link. Let's see, I want to thank, first I want to thank anybody who showed up for the raffle and then decided to stick around for the Al-Anon talk. Looking at you, good, Jason. And I want to thank Maureen and Jackie for picking me up from the airport. Appreciate that. And Phil and the rest of the committee for inviting me to be here. I have a terrible memory, so when I was invited to come, I completely forgot that I was here 3 years ago. In fact, I just figured that out yesterday. So that means either my talk was so great, they just had to get me back. Or much, much more likely, my talk was so unremarkable that everybody just forgot they just heard me. It's probably the second one, but either way, I'm really glad to be here. I love this area, I love this conference, and I love hanging out with all of y'all. Let's see. Well, what I've been asked to do here is to tell you a little bit about what I was like, what happened, and what I'm like now. And I really emphasize that I, because this story needs to be about me as much as possible. I qualify for Al-Anon. My life has been impacted by alcoholism and relatives or friends, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But the defects of character that made my life so unmanageable, and still can today, the self-centered fear and the resentment and the self-pity and the rage and all that stuff, I don't remember a time that my life wasn't dominated by those characteristics. So I usually start out by saying I needed a meeting long before I picked up my first drunk. I'm here because there's something wrong with me, and I'm going to try to keep the focus on that. I was born in Charlotte, the oldest of 5 kids, into really what was a very loving family by any reasonable standards. I had a pretty good upbringing, but my standards have never been reasonable, and I was a miserable kid from my first memories. My mom is the most loving person on earth. I love my mom. We have a great relationship today, largely due to this program. But, with that love always came fear. It was not fear of each other, it was for each other. I never know how to explain this, but it was like if you loved someone, you were afraid for them all the time, for their well-being, for their safety, for their health. It's kind of how we measured how much we loved each other, was how full of fear and anxiety we were all the time for each other. And, that was my mom's way of loving, and I resented that, and I felt smothered by it, I felt overwhelmed by it, and I didn't understand it. And the other thing that really defined my growing up, and it was a family joke, that mom has to save the universe. There's 5 of us kids, but I also had a series of foster brothers who would come stay with us for a while until they got adopted, and then I'd have a new brother. There was always some stranger living in the guest bedroom that mom was taking care of, homeless people at the table at holidays, and there's nothing wrong with these things, but being selfish and self-centered from a very early age, I thought, why is mom giving all these strangers coming in and out of the house at any time, her unconditional love? I want it all to myself. Why am I not good enough? And so, I did what I always did, which I took something that had nothing to do with me and made it all about me and decided I'm not good enough. Mom's not loving me enough. I became a just hardcore perfectionist, had to make straight A's at school, just uptight all the time, and just miserable. We were a God-fearing family in the most literal sense of that term, so we were at church constantly, and from preschool on, I went to a church school, and I resented that. It was just mom's way of protecting us from the devil that was around every corner, that was out there waiting to get us. That was mom loving me, and I didn't see that as mom loving me. I saw it as smothering and overwhelming, and I hated that church school, and I hated the teachers, and I hated the principal, and I hated all my, I wouldn't even call them friends. I felt like I didn't have any friends. Just horribly self-conscious. I had to get into Al-Anon to really think about what those words are. Self-conscious means I'm conscious of me. That means I'm thinking about me. I'm thinking about me all the time. I think you think about me as much as I think about me. And I never think anything good about me, so I know you're not thinking anything good about me when you think about me all the time. And this is on a constant loop in my head from my earliest memories. Just uncomfortable in my own skin, didn't fit in. I ended up getting, just going back to mom real quick. She loved us so much, and I hate that I resented the way she loved me. And obviously, I've had a chance to make amends for that. But growing up, the only real drinker I knew, which was surprise, my mom's mom. Now, she was the fun grandma. She wasn't the one that made me go to church and sit quietly. She was the one that would sneak me a sip of every beer that I'd bring her, and act inappropriately in public, which is fun up until a certain age. Look, Granny's sitting in a stranger's lap at the restaurant. It's funny when you're young, and then you don't understand why it's not funny to everybody else. And like many problem drinkers I've known, she was gregarious and talented and fun, and she always acted crazy. I just remember being very aware. She doesn't seem to change when she opens that first beer. Why does everybody else in the room change when she opens that first beer? But that's how this thing works in the family. So again, maybe Mom was loving us the way she learned as the oldest child of a problem drinker to deal with the world, and how you love people and how you take care of people and how you have control by taking care of the people you love. So it's not about blaming anybody. It's just about understanding how this family disease can work its way down and affect us all. But anyway, back in school, I'm miserable, just in trouble all the time. Now, I've got straight A's because I have to. I actually ended up skipping second grade because I was such a perfectionist, and then I was a year younger than everybody else in my class, so the social awkwardness was somehow even worse. Ended up getting kicked out of that school halfway through 8th grade for no particular event. They just got tired of me arguing and questioning, and they just said, my mom prefers that I say I was asked to leave, because that's different than being kicked out. So I was asked to leave that school halfway through 8th grade, and then I was homeschooled for a year and a half, which was absolutely miserable for everyone involved in that. And then for grades 10 through 12, they sent me off to another small religious school that they really couldn't afford. But again, Mom could not bear sending me to public school out there. That's how protected we were. I remember getting grounded once because they caught me listening to the radio, just for an example. That kind of, we're going to protect you from the outside world at all costs. So I go off to this school. Now I'm really socially awkward. I've been homeschooled for a year and a half. 10th grade, and I walk in there, and man, everybody there seemed to have a lot of money, and we didn't. They had all the nice clothes that I didn't have. They all had the same haircut, it seemed like. And I just immediately decided I'm never going to fit in here. I never gave them a chance. I made the decision. If I'm never going to fit in, I'm going to at least act like I'm not fitting in on purpose. I'm going to reject them before they can reject me. And so I started growing my hair as long as I could get away with at this school, and dressing in the rattiest clothes that I could. And I was just absolutely miserable, full of self-centered fear all the time, constantly in trouble. And I found my solution. She came in to that school halfway through a school year. And boy, in my very sheltered existence, I had never met anybody like her. Now, she looked different. She dressed in crazy clothes, and she had her hair dyed pink, and that was, a little more unusual in the early 90s. And she just looked crazy, but, I know today I could have picked her out the blindfold, because I'm just really good at finding these people that need my help. And she just really seemed like she needed my help. She was drunk all the time. She just was never where she said she was going to be. She lied about everything for no reason, and I was absolutely in love. She was an older woman. She was 17, I was 15. That was exciting. And we were off and running. We started dating. Our poor chemistry teacher said, well, she needs some help with chemistry. Why don't you tutor her in chemistry? And that's how that wonderful relationship started. So we were off and running, and it was insane. I eventually got my license, so the driving around town got a little safer, because she was just drunk all the time. She would put any substance in her body if it would change where she was at emotionally. And I had a full-time job. Now, I don't have time to sit by myself and wonder what's wrong with me and why don't I fit in. I have a full-time job, and it's taking care of her. It's bailing her out and lying for her and making excuses for her and trying to track her down, figure out where she is when she doesn't show up for school, and holding her hair when she throws up. I mean, just little things like that I remember as a 15-year-old, how fulfilling that was. And that's insane, especially for somebody that young. But here I am helping this poor, desperate person who so needs my help. What Mom had done, without knowing it and not meaning to, was to teach me that to be a good person, you go out in the world and you find the sickest people you can find, and you hold them down and you help the hell out of them, whether they want it or not. And that's what good people do. And I just took that to heart, and that filled a hole in me that I didn't know existed. And it was exhilarating, and it was terrifying, but it did something for me. I didn't have time to wonder what was wrong with me anymore. And so we graduated the same year. She was 19, I was 17. And she did the quote unquote normal thing. She went off to Tennessee to go to school. And I said, I hate school. I hate, authority. I hate everything. I turned down some really good scholarship offers that I was going to regret later. And I'm not going to college. And, I always used to say I hated school, and I did. But inventory showed me that was all based in fear. I was so full of fear. The idea of going off to yet another, even bigger place in the real world out there where I definitely wasn't going to fit in just absolutely terrified me. So I said, nope, I'm not going to school. I'm moving out. So at 17, I got to choose for the first time in my life who I was going to live with. And this is who I chose. Two guys well on their way toward probable alcoholism with some other issues thrown in there. And then our fourth roommate was one of these weird, normal people. We're still good friends today. Not an alcoholic, but also not whatever I am. He did not last very long in that house. We were all 17, 18 years old. Someone rented us a 4-bedroom house, and it was a decent place for a couple of days, and then it was not anymore. But as you can imagine, 4 17, 18-year-olds, and it was absolute insanity. And my normal friend said, I can't live like this. He moved back in with his mom after a few weeks, and I remember being so angry at him. How can you abandon me here with these drunken idiots and make it all my job? I just started living in this haze of self-righteous indignation about why is it always on me? Why do I have to be the one to make sure the bills get paid and the holes in the walls get patched and the cops get talked to when they're here every other week? Why is it always on me? Why can't they just get their act together just for maybe a day or a week so I can just relax? And I think that's the crux of my insanity, is that someone else has got to change for me to be okay. And that's the first part of the first step to me. As long as that's true, my life's going to remain completely unmanageable. And it was so unmanageable. We had to get another roommate to pay the rent. We had met this really old guy who was probably like 30 looking back on it, but it's like super old guy. And he had a lot of money. And we thought, well, maybe he'll pay the rent. So we invited him to move in. He was coming through town. And he did move in, and to his credit, he did pay the rent. But also the reason he had so much money was not only was he probably an alcoholic with these other issues, he was selling these other issues out of my home. And then things got really, really insane. Now I have, every rave party in 1993 in Charlotte had its after party in my basement. Hundreds of people are milling about my house at any given point, and I am absolutely insane. It's so unmanageable. Why do I have to live like this? And it never occurred to me that I could live somewhere else. I mean, I mean that literally. It's not like I thought, well, I could move out and chose not to. It never occurred to me that I had any options other than someone else changing. And these strangers around, and I'm kicking people off the bathroom floor in the morning so I can take a shower and go to work. I'm stalking around the house with a shotgun, scaring people so they'll leave. I am absolutely out of my mind, and I'm not doing this stuff that they're doing. They were just kind of, cleaning the grout in the kitchen for me, which was nice every once in a while, but it was absolute insanity. And one of my original roommates that I had actually gone to high school with, he was the other weirdo, literally. There were two of us in high school. And we'd gotten to be pretty good friends, and we hung out a lot and got to know each other and drank a lot together. This is where I usually remember to say, I was right there with these guys doing a lot, not everything, but doing a lot of what they were doing. I gave alcoholism a really good shot because I was miserable. I was uncomfortable in my own skin. If any substance had ever worked the magic that I've heard hundreds and hundreds of alcoholics describe over the years, I think I would be dead. I just don't have it. There but for the grace of God. It's nothing special about me. But anyway, I'd gotten to be pretty close with this guy, and what happened was he got hooked real quick on the stuff the new guy was selling, and it was devastating. Overnight personality change. He's a completely different person, and I was devastated. And I must have read about tough love somewhere, because 18 years old, 17, sit down with him one day and have this really serious talk. Hey man, I love you, and our friendship means a lot to me, but if you're going to keep doing this stuff, we can't be friends anymore. I just remember it like it was yesterday. He just looked at me and said, all right, bye. And I was devastated. How could he do that to me? I'm so grateful to know in Al-Anon today that absolutely nothing outside of me has anything at all to do with me. But back then, they were all doing it to me, and I was crushed by that. I remember the first time my girlfriend was coming to visit from Tennessee, from college, and I've been looking forward to this for a couple of months, and I'm a planner. I like to control. So I've got the whole weekend planned out, what we're going to do, where we're going to go. And this is just a testament to the type of place I chose to live in. She walked in the door, I haven't seen her in months, Someone handed her a substance. She did what she always did, which was to ingest the substance without, stopping to ask what it was. And she's off to the races. Now, I've got plans. Her plans for the evening now involve sitting in the corner for the next 8 to 10 hours looking at her hands. That's what she's going to be doing tonight. And I'm devastated. How could she do that to me? Doesn't she know I've got this whole weekend planned out? Just, and again, talk about insanity. Every time someone did the exact same thing they always did, I was shocked. They did it again. The same thing they've done every single time. They did it again because, again, that's my insanity. This time it'll be different. This time they'll behave the way I think they ought to behave. This time they'll love me the way I want to be loved. And every time they do the same thing, I can't believe it. Absolutely insane. So that was, I don't know why that was the final straw, because it wasn't the first or the 100th time that it happened. But that was it. I had to end that relationship. I'm not proud of this, but I was scared of her. She was increasingly erratic. She had become physically violent. And so like a real man, I waited till she was back in Tennessee and broke up with her over the phone. Again, not proud of that, but that's just honesty. And she did what I thought she was going to do. Her roommate was calling me saying, she's hurting herself. You've got to change your mind. You got to. And I was somehow able to say no. And I don't know how I said no. I never said no to anybody about anything. If I was going to feel like a good guy or get a pat on the back, I put myself in the most insane, dangerous situations because I could not say no. I put my name, not my money, but my name on a $10,000 bail for a friend of a friend of a friend because nobody else we knew had a driver's license. And fortunately, he showed up. But just because I thought, well, that's what a good guy would do. That's what a complete idiot would do. But that's what I would do because I just wanted to feel like a good guy. Anyway, so I was able to say no, and and she kept calling me. I moved around a lot in my late teens, early 20s, and I was never in the phone book back then. But she would call my parents at 3 in the morning, and they would tell me the next day she's calling again, and I never talked to her again. And, I talk a lot about her because she was the first probable alcoholic that I chose. I chose her. She didn't choose me. And I absolutely hated her when I came into Al-Anon. I thought because she did some pretty awful stuff, and I thought she had ruined my view of women and love and relationships, and I truly hated her. And what happened was when I had just finished working my 9th step, and my sponsor would not let me track her down because she was erratic. He said, if you run into her on the street, you're going to make amends, but you're not going to go try to track her down and make amends. You don't have the right to unburden yourself at her expense. But it may have been too late because I found out about that time that at some point she had killed herself. I think she had a daughter, young daughter, I don't know the details. And when I found that out, I am so grateful, selfishly grateful for my recovery because I was free. I had no sense of responsibility. If I had not had recovery, what I would have done was to think, what could I have done? Maybe if I had taken one of those phone calls, maybe I could, and I wouldn't have seen the incredible arrogance and ego in that line of thinking that I somehow could have had some power over this disease that she was powerless over. It's just how I thought. When I found that out, because of the willingness to make amends that the 8th step talks about, even though I never got to make amends, I was completely free. I didn't have any sense of responsibility, but the resentment and the anger towards her was gone. I felt sorry for her that she never found recovery. I felt sorry for her family. She wasn't a horrible person. She had a horrible disease. And that is part of this incredible freedom that this program has given me. But very briefly, I'm going to move through this, but going back, I'm now 18 years old, I guess, and I found out real quick that I cannot survive without someone else to obsess about. Now I'm back to where I was at 15. I only have myself sitting alone in the room, wondering what's wrong with me. And so it was a matter of weeks later that I found my next volunteer hostage. Here she is. She needs my help. Her older sister's alcoholism had destroyed her home. She was still in high school. I think she was 17. And we moved in together and lived together for the next 4.5 years, off and on, but mostly on. And it was miserable for both of us. Just, I don't know if she's an alcoholic, but we both did a lot of drinking, and we both did enormous emotional damage to each other. Just two people that hated themselves and therefore weren't going to have any respect for someone who wanted to be in a relationship with them. And it was really rough. We had some good times. I hope I wouldn't have stayed for 4.5 years if it had been all miserable. We traveled all over the country, over half the states for months at a time. I had the VW van and had the long hair and the beard down to here. And I was trying really hard to be a hippie, and there were a couple things wrong with that. The first one, it was the mid-'90s. That was one thing wrong with it. But actually the main thing wrong with it was that I found out that people like me who desperately need Al-Anon make horrible hippies. Control freak, schedule oriented. It's my van, we're going to do it my way. And I wanted that seeming ease and comfort of that lifestyle was so attractive to me. And I had the look in the van, and I just could not relax. Everybody else was wondering, what the hell is wrong with this guy? It's my van. So anyway, I was the world's worst hippie who ever lived. So we had some good times, but mostly it was really miserable. But I stayed for the same reason I've always stayed. In relationships, in friendships, in jobs. It's never going to get any better than this. I don't deserve any better than this. And I truly believed that she needed me. And I needed nothing more than to be needed. And so we were going to get married. We had found a place up in Colorado on one of our trips and up above Boulder, and we were going to go get married. We packed up everything we owned. We let the lease run out on our little crappy duplex and packed everything up. And what happened was I met Annie. Annie and I were working together. I was managing a natural food store, which is the only job you can get when you look like I looked. And she was working there, and we just absolutely fell in love. And I could not believe that someone this incredible would want to have, and I just hated myself. I couldn't believe anybody like this would want to have anything at all to do with me. And, we were friends working together for a long time. And she had a very different view of God than the dogma that I had grown up with. She would say things like, every day I got to decide God is either everything or God is nothing. And if I do the footwork and turn it over to God, I just feel like things are going to work out the way they're supposed to. And this just blew me away because I had rejected the God of my upbringing, but they had done a really good job of convincing me that that was my only option. I truly didn't know there was any other option. And so this spirituality was just so attractive to me, and we just absolutely fell head over heels in love. But I have a fiance, so that was bad. And so I had to end that relationship, and that was really hard. And it's so embarrassing to admit why it was so hard. Mainly, it was because I had convinced myself that my fiance just could not live without me. And I don't know how you can have zero self-esteem, no sense of self-worth whatsoever, and convince yourself that someone just can't live without you. But that's what I had done. She's fine, by the way. She has thanked me more than once for ending that abomination of a relationship. So she's doing good. But at the time, I just didn't think she was going to survive. So anyway, I ended that relationship. But I had told a guy who was from Colorado, who was living with us, that when we went to get married, I would take him home to Boulder, Colorado. So one day, ex-fiance, him, packed everything we owned in the car. I drove straight from Charlotte to Boulder, Colorado. Wouldn't let anybody else drive. It was insane. Straight 24 hours, almost exactly. Because if I'm going to do something difficult, I'm going to do it in the most insane, dangerous way possible just to get it over with. Got her there, dropped her off with some friends, dropped him off at home, gave her everything we owned because that's how I dealt with this overwhelming guilt. You take the car, you take everything. Got on a Greyhound bus at 22 years old with a duffel bag, everything I owned in the world, duffel bag and a pillow. And for I think it was a 44-hour trip back to Charlotte, which was delightful. I highly recommend that. And got into Charlotte, like 4 o'clock in the morning, and Annie came and picked me up, and we moved in together because that's how I date, apparently. And now, Annie does like me to remember to say that there actually was no infidelity. We moved in together and went out on our first date the next day. That's actually a true story, probably not recommended, but that's how that worked. But those first couple of months were just a pink cloud for both of us. Neither of us had experienced this kind of overwhelming love and infatuation in this pink cloud. And I started going to open AA meetings with her and hanging out with young people in recovery. And I was really attracted to, obviously I love drunks. I've never met recovered ones in sobriety. And so I was really enjoying that and read the first 164 pages of her book and thought, this is good stuff for people that need it. And, I heard her give her first talk at a meeting and thought, she's one of those people who needs it because this person she's describing that she was is not the person I fell in love with. So, this is good stuff. And we were just, this relationship immediately became my higher power. I didn't have one. And the fact that someone this beautiful inside and out would want to have anything to do with me validated me in a way that I just never thought possible. This relationship was my God. And that did not work out well for me because we were going to visit that normal friend of mine He and his girlfriend were living in Wilmington, North Carolina. We went to visit them. We're out at a restaurant that's also a brewery. And, my friends aren't alcoholics. I'm not alcoholic. Annie's been sober 3-4 years now. She assures me she's fine being around alcohol. So, they're bringing around little shot glasses of beer so we can see what pitcher we want to order. And she just reaches over and swigs a shot glass of beer. I'm not here to tell her story, but she has given me permission to share that she had stopped doing the stuff she's got to do on a daily basis to maintain her sobriety. And she was ready to drink after those years of sobriety. She was waiting for us to say, hey, it's about time, join in. And then she was going to get a real drink, as she tells it. But that is not the reaction she got. My friends know she's sober. They're confused. I'm appalled. What are you doing? And she just played it off and slid that back across the table, said I was just fooling around. And that's all I ever saw her drink. And everything crashed after that. And I was to learn later that's because one symptom of alcoholism, in my experience, is the overconsumption of alcohol. And I was about to learn about a whole lot of other symptoms of this disease of alcoholism. But I didn't think about it much. We got back home. She's given me permission to share this. She had a new sponsor. She was working back through the steps. And kind of on her way out the door after a fifth step, as an afterthought, she said, a couple months ago, I had literally a swig of beer, a sip of beer. And her sponsor said, okay, well, you're going to need to change your sobriety date. And all I can tell you is that the woman that came home from that meeting with her sponsor, I didn't recognize. The woman I fell in love with loved AA and loved the fellowship and was so grateful for her sponsor. And this woman was angry and resentful and saying stuff like, if I'm going to pick up a white chip, I'm going to go earn a damn white chip. And I was terrified. I don't recognize this person, and she's going to drink. She's going to drink, and it's going to be my fault because I'm that important and powerful. If I had not taken her there and ordered that beer, it wouldn't have happened. And how am I going to monitor her mood? I must have asked her 100 times a day, you doing okay today? Driving her crazy. I can't believe I didn't drive her to drink with that. You okay? Trying to monitor her mood and keep an eye on her. And just her behavior is increasingly erratic. She's angry all the time. She's resentful. She's blaming me for stuff that has nothing to do with me. And all these other symptoms are coming out, and I don't recognize them as such. I don't know what's going on. I know how to deal with active alcoholism. At least there's something to blame it on. They were drunk. They'll sober up. They won't act like that again. How do I deal with this, basically the same behaviors, when there's no booze to blame it on? And I am absolutely out of my mind. I'm trying to think, how am I going to live the rest of my life walking on eggshells, keeping an eye on her, trying to manage her mood? There were times when her behavior was so erratic, I thought she was drinking. I didn't know what was going on. And I am just absolutely, it's dominating every thought from that waking moment to the moment I fall asleep at night, affecting every relationship, affecting my work. It's all I can think about, and I'm trying to change it. I'm trying to control it. Why can't we just get back to the way it was? And I was at the end. This relationship in my mind was the only good thing that had ever happened to me. And if I couldn't have it, that was it. I was ready to check out. I kind of stood at a jumping off place where I couldn't imagine life with the alcoholic, not like this, but I couldn't imagine life without the alcoholic. And if she did not change, I was ready to check out. And I was describing this insanity to a friend of hers who was in AA at the time, who did a very loving thing as a member of AA. She just said, have you heard about Al-Anon? Now, I'm sure I said something like, yeah, I've heard about that Al-Anon stuff. My opinion of Al-Anon came from the uninformed views of some members of AA. So I did not have a high opinion of Al-Anon at the time. It was just ignorance. We didn't know what was going on in those rooms, so we imagined the worst. I've heard about that Al-Anon, not for me. And she just, again, didn't push it. But as a member of AA, she said, I've gone. It's helped me a lot. You might want to try it. I don't think she's sober today. I don't even know if she's alive today, but she saved my life just by extending the hand of Al-Anon as a member of AA and just telling me about it. And I'm so grateful for absolute desperation because I was willing to try one more thing to prove that it wouldn't work either. And then I was out of here. And so one day in June or I don't know my date, but one day in June or July of 99, it's the closest I can get. I walked in my first meeting, and it was Monday night at 8 o'clock, and I looked around that meeting, and I was somehow even more sure that I did not belong in Al-Anon. I was 23. I still had the long hair and the beard, big red at the time, beard down to here. And, I probably had cut-off shorts on, whatever. And I walked in there, looked around the room, and thought, there's no way I have anything in common with these people. I mean, at the time, it looked to be about 95% women. The median age looked to be about 102 at the time. And again, I was 23. I think everybody looks super old when you're 20. Now I'm twice that now. So I'm the old guy in the room. But I just thought there's no way. And you know what? They didn't care what I looked like. They welcomed me with open arms. Nobody ever asked, are you looking for the other meeting? Which I hear people do sometimes. I would have eventually figured out if I was looking for the other meeting. What I was looking for was an excuse to not come back, and nobody would give me one. I cannot describe to you how much I did not want to be in Al-Anon, and nobody would give me an excuse to leave and not come back. So I kept coming back, and I never shared. I was so terrified of people. I couldn't even read a single step if it was passed around because my hands shook so badly. Just absolutely scared of everything and everybody. But I kept coming back. Annie and I got married in January of 2000, and it was rough the first few years. She describes it, her description, as a long period of dry drunk. She just could not get back the spiritual sobriety that she had. She wasn't drinking, but she just could not get back what she had had after she had to give up those 3 or 4 years. She just couldn't do it. And it was rough. If you've lived with a dry drunk, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, I really can't describe it to you. We went through just about everything I've heard described in active alcoholism without the alcohol. It was rough. But in Al-Anon, they were telling me, yes, you're right. She is insane, but so are you. And you can only do something about one side of that coin. And if you want to be happy, joyous, and free, you better figure out a way that can happen no matter what she's doing. And that was an absolute impossibility in my mind. In fact, it sounded like the opposite of love. You're telling me that I can be okay even if someone I love is behaving this way and hurting and all this stuff? And they said, yeah, that's exactly what we're telling you. And to me, that's the beauty of this program, but absolute impossibility at the time. So I kept coming back. Let's see how we're doing here. I wasn't getting better. And, I'm so grateful, because of what I thought Al-Anon was, I really did think that, they were just going to be, a woman was going to say, yeah, and then he got drunk, and then he ran over the dog, and then he crashed into the car, and then crashed the car into the house, and then the house burned down, and I'll pass. And I was going to have to say, yeah, my girlfriend took a sip of beer, and I'm really freaking out about it, and they're going to say, get out, you don't belong here. And I'm so grateful that I landed in a group where they weren't talking about alcoholics. They were talking about themselves, their defects of character, their program, their spiritual growth. And I'm so grateful for that because they kept saying, if you want to get better, you're going to have to work this program. And to me, it's the steps we took, which are suggested as the program of recovery. I love the groups, I love the fellowship, but I did not start really getting better until I got a sponsor and started working these steps. And so I finally got up the courage to do that, one of the hardest things I've ever done. This guy was always at this Tuesday meeting, and I wanted what he had. We had nothing in common. What I wanted, he was always sharing the solution. He had a serenity to him that was beyond my comprehension. And so I got up enough courage to say, will you be my sponsor? And he said, yeah, I'd be happy to work with you, but I got to tell you, I'm also in AA. And I didn't know that. In most of our Al-Anon meetings, we ask members of other anonymous fellowships to retain their anonymity in Al-Anon so we can keep the focus on the Al-Anon program. And I'm grateful that he respected that, because I don't know if I would have asked him, and he changed my life. So he said, I'm also in AA. And, my first thought obviously was there were like 40 people in that meeting and I could still pick a drunk out of a room just at random because I just love them so much. But at that point, it would have been really awkward to say, oh, well, never mind. So I said, yeah, let's do it. And he said, let's get started. I really thought I had taken the first step because I knew intellectually, I knew that I couldn't control if she was going to drink. I couldn't control anything else she was doing. So why would I think that? And I knew my life was unmanageable. I'm spending 4 or 5 nights a week in churches. I swore I'd never step foot in a church again. Obviously, my life's unmanageable. So I was ready to move on. He had me take a deeper look at that. He had me write down every single thing, every person, every outcome, every institution in my life that I'm powerless over. But much more importantly, he had me write down next to each one of those things, specifically how my life becomes unmanageable when I'm trying to control those things. That's the connection I need to see. My life's not unmanageable because I'm powerless over alcoholism and alcoholics. If that were true, I wouldn't have any hope because I'm always going to be powerless. My life's only unmanageable when I refuse to accept that I'm powerless over that stuff and try to control it. And I really needed to see that connection because I had lived my whole life with this delusion that if I love you, obviously I can't be okay unless you're okay, right? That's love. And you being okay means that you're doing the things I think you ought to be doing and not doing the things I don't think you should be doing. And if you're not applying my solution to what I think your problem is, the only reason for that I can imagine is that I haven't explained it well enough yet. I can't think of any other reason why you wouldn't be hearing what I'm saying. And so I'll explain over and over and over in slightly different words with this delusion that one day you're going to get it. And you're going to apologize for not getting it earlier, and you're going to say, you're so right, it's so obvious that my behavior is unacceptable, and then you're going to change, and then and only then, am I going to be okay? And that's not just unmanageability, that's the insanity I'd lived my whole life with, and I really had to get a deep look at that unmanageability and insanity before I could even think about this power greater than me. I came in with a lot of prejudice against the God of my upbringing, just, a lot of contempt prior to investigation and preconceived notions and all that stuff that a lot of us have had to let go of. And I'm so grateful that they said, it's your conception, but there's got to be some power. It doesn't even say a being here. It says there's a power greater than me that could restore me to sanity. And as crazy as I thought I wasn't quite arrogant enough to say whatever is keeping the planet spinning isn't powerful enough to restore me to sanity. And that's all I had to do to move on and make that decision. And, our path to recovery says, having come to believe this, it naturally follows that we would make a decision to turn our will. And it did not naturally follow for me. I was terrified. Mostly I was terrified of the idea of giving up control. And my sponsor had to remind me over and over, we are never asked to give up control. I'm being asked to give up the delusion of control. I don't have any control to give up. If I think I have control to give up, I need to take another peek at that first step where I saw that I have no control whatsoever. I'm just being asked to give up this delusion that I have any control over anything that's outside of me. And I was able to do that. And I was able to get on my knees and pray a third step prayer. And the first action I was going to take to indicate that I had made this decision was inventory. We have a lot of ways to do inventory in Al-Anon. I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way. I think the right way is probably the way that worked for your sponsor, and that was my experience. I'm grateful for the simplicity in my inventory. It was a resentment list, a fears list, a sex conduct list, and we moved on, and that worked really well for me. But that resentment list was a great way of tricking someone like me into taking my own inventory, because I got to start, of course, by writing down all the people that had done these horrible things to me. Going back to preschool, they had ruined my life, and got to write them all down and just get that out. And then I got to write down the terrible things they had done to me. And then, this gets a little harder. I got to write down specifically what it affected in me. How did it impact me? I see fear all over the place. But then I got to turn the page, and I got to look at me. Well, first, I got to think about maybe forgiving them. Not for their sake, because they don't care. But maybe they were as sick as I was, and maybe I need to let go of that for my sake. But then I have to set all of that aside and look at my behavior. Why did I do the things I did? Why did I consistently make decisions based on self that put me in a position to be hurt? And this is where I get to see my defects of character in black and white. And this is painful for me. I get to see that the things I thought were my only assets are not assets, they're defects. This taking care of everybody but myself, I thought that made me a great guy. It did not. I never did that selflessly. I was always trying to get something from that. Get a pat on the back, or get someone to behave the way I wanted them to, or to love me the way I wanted to be loved. Never selfless. This is painful, but on down the line, I get to see that it's my defects of character that are making my life unmanageable and blocking me from the sunlight of the Spirit. And that, as painful as it is good news. Because if it's you, I can't do anything about that. But if it's me, with the help of this program and the God of my understanding that I found here, I can do something about that. So I got all that stuff out in my inventory in my fifth step. Sponsor sent me home. Spent some time in prayer meditation, reviewing the first five proposals. Made sure I'd been as thorough as possible, and I truly believed that I had been. And, got on my knees and prayed a 7-step prayer and went to bed and woke up the next day. And I don't know what I expected to happen, but I didn't feel any different. I called my sponsor. I said, I don't feel like these defects have gone anywhere. I still feel this fear, this resentment. And he said, did you bother to read what it says in that step? Because it doesn't say anything about the defects being removed. It says we're entirely ready, and we humbly ask God to remove them. And in my experience, part of that humility is it's not going to happen on my time. It's going to happen on God's time. It's probably not going to be the defect of character that's making me uncomfortable at the moment that gets removed next. Hopefully it's the one that's keeping me from being of service to God and to others. But a big part of that for me is the readiness in step 6. How do I know if I'm ready? And for me, it's through my actions on a daily basis. I only know if I'm ready if I'm acting differently than I used to. And God has never removed a defect if I keep behaving the same way. God's never removed resentment if I keep doing for others what they could be doing for themselves. I can pray and pray and pray, God, remove that resentment. I got to pray for the courage to stop doing their job for them, for that resentment to be removed. God's never removed self-centered fear. if I refuse to do stuff that terrifies me, like public speaking. The first time I was asked to even talk at a meeting, I was just absolutely terrified. But they told me, you got to learn how to say no to a lot of stuff, but Al-Anon requests are not on that list. And so I said yes, and I probably spoke for 20 minutes, barely able to stand up, and I sat down, and that was fine. And then the first time I got asked to speak at something like this, and they give you like a year to think about this every day. I would think about it every day and have physical pain. And I would say, God, please remove this defect, this self-centered fear, which to me is what this is, so that I can do your will, which is just get up there and share to the best of my ability what this program and you, God, have done in my life. And I can tell you, when I got up there behind that podium, I was just as terrified as I was when I said yes. But the point is, the next time, it was a little easier. And the next time after that, it was a little easier. And I still get really nervous when I do this. That's not a defect because it's not keeping me from doing God's will. But the point is, I've got to do the action first. I want God to remove the defect first. And then I'll do anything God wants me to do. And that's never been my experience. I still like self-righteous indignation. It feels good. I'm much better at it than I used to be. But I still like that. And I'll pray, God, I know I need to treat this person with love, but I can't because I just hate them. I can't stand them. And so you just go ahead and remove that, and then I'll go treat them in the way they should be treated. And the God of my understanding says it doesn't work that way. You go treat that person with love and respect that they deserve as a child of God. And in doing that, in demonstrating my readiness through my action, God is able to remove that defect. Now, don't get me wrong. I can't remove the defects. If I could do that myself, I wouldn't be here. But I've got to participate in the removal by demonstrating my readiness. I'm running out of time here, but I do want to run through real quick the rest of my experience in recovery here. I carried a lot of guilt and shame, and I got to take care of that. With my sponsor's help, I was able to take, I think, everybody off my resentment list and add some people on there because I saw the harm that I had done, and go out and find these people. And I'm so grateful for sponsorship at every step of the way, but particularly here, because I would have messed this up. And he said, we're not asking them for forgiveness because we're not putting any burden on them. If they want to forgive you, that's great. We were simply acknowledging the harm that was done and making a commitment to them, to myself, and to the God of my understanding to change that behavior. And I was able to do that. And I was not enthusiastic about it, but I was willing. And the freedom that came with that, the freedom not only of the guilt and shame, but the freedom of resentment, the resentment that I had toward these people was gone. No matter what their reaction to the amends was, the resentment was completely gone because I had cleaned up my side of the road. And that's an incredible freedom. I can go anywhere and do anything, and I don't have time to go into some of the amends stories, stuff I've been able to do for my family that I would not have been able to do if I had not taken care of that stuff. And I never have to carry around that combination of guilt, shame, and resentment if I'm continuing to do inventory and when I'm wrong, promptly admit it. To me, that's a lot broader, when I'm wrong. 8 and 9 talk about harm. I can go months without harming someone, but I'm wrong pretty much on a daily basis. And when I'm wrong, if I'm willing to promptly admit it, I never have to feel like that anymore, but I got to do it promptly. So I still have that justifier in my head. The longer I wait, the more justified that behavior was. So when I'm willing to do that, I can be happy, joyous, and free no matter what's going on around me. I didn't know how to pray when I got here, and I love the simplicity of praying only for knowledge of God's will and the power to carry that out. I grew up praying for outcomes and not getting them, and then that was just proof that God didn't love me, and praying for what I thought I needed and praying for what I thought you needed. If I pray only for knowledge of God's will and the power to carry that out, and then I do the footwork in the direction that I feel led, then I truly do believe that whatever the outcome is, no matter how horrible it is exactly where I'm supposed to be, and I'm going to be okay. No matter what, I'm going to be okay. And that might not sound like much to normies out there, but to someone like me who was never okay, who never had a moment's serenity, that is truly a miracle, to know that no matter what happens, if I'm seeking God's will and trying to go in that direction, I'm not only going to be okay, I am okay. That is incredible to me. I'm going to say just a little bit about my life today. It says having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. That's it. That's all we get, and it's changed everything in my life. It says, we try to do a couple of things. Try to carry the message. I'm an active member of my home group. I try to do what's asked of me, within the meetings. And I've gotten to sponsor guys and just take the worst things that I ever went through and share them with these guys who think they're the only guys that ever did that or felt that way, and see the lights come on when they realize that they're not alone. What an incredible gift. I was able to be an Al-Anon sponsor for about 8 years. Really huge part of my early recovery. Highly recommend it to anybody who's thinking about it. And on and on and on. And that's not because I'm a great guy. It's just because this is what I've got to do to maintain my spiritual sobriety. And then try to carry the message outside the meetings. I think the best way I can do that is to practice these principles in all my affairs. I'm on my best behavior in an Al-Anon meeting. It's not that that's not the real me. It is the real me. It's just the best me that you're ever going to see. And then I get cut off in traffic on the way home, and that all flies out the window. So, I'm trying to behave in the real world the way I do around you, because that's the person that I want to be. And I got to remember, I might be the only version of Al-Anon that someone out there who hasn't had recovery gets to see. And I try to remember that. And then practice these principles in all our affairs. One of my favorite long-timers, she's long passed away, she used to say, one of the definitions of practice is to learn through repetition. And I really love that. Some of you might have heard that, but I'm never going to be perfect, but I'm learning through repeating these behaviors that I've learned, that you've taught me. My life today is beyond anything that I could imagine. I did go back to school, got a little 2-year degree, got my foot in the door, and got an actual grown-up career out of that. Couldn't have done that without Al-Anon. I'm just so full of fear, but I was able to do it and got through that. I have a wonderful relationship with my mom and the rest of my family, all of whom desperately need recovery and don't have it, and that's none of my business, and I know that today, and I'm able to carry the message to them if they ask. Not to push it on them, just to share with them what I've learned here. And on and on and on. I don't have time to talk about it, but I do want to say this. We're promised a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. We're not promised that things are going to work out the way we wanted them to or the way that we thought they were going to. Annie and I had a lot of up and down years. We traveled to a lot of conferences together and went to a lot of meetings together, and we'd have good times, and we had some really, really rough times. But toward the end of 2015, we just realized this isn't working. We're trying to change each other, whatever you want to call it. We were trying to practice these principles in our affairs, trying to apply the traditions in our marriage, and we just had to accept that this isn't working. We made the mutual decision to part ways, and it was absolutely the most devastating thing I've ever been through. I felt like a failure. I felt like I'd failed my family. I'd failed Al-Anon, and I'm so grateful that Al-Anon supported me through that. Sometimes relationships end. Sometimes they change. And that's what happened in our relationship. Because we were both practicing these principles in all our affairs, we not only got through that separation and divorce with dignity and grace, but we're great friends today. She was just texting me about some more cats she rescued yesterday. We're great friends today, and I'm so grateful for that. We're exactly where we're supposed to be. Not where I thought we would be, but where we're supposed to be. I really do need to wrap it up here. Yeah, like I said, I think I'm going to be okay kind of sums up the spiritual awakening as best as I can. But there's something in one of our readings. It's from Survival to Recovery, page 269 and 270 in the old version. And some people call these the promises of Al-Anon. I know there's no such thing as the promises of Al-Anon. But you know what? Anything in our literature that says, if you do this, this will happen, to me is a promise. So these are some of the many promises of Al-Anon. I'm not going to read all of them because I don't have time and I don't have the book. But my favorite one, and I'm paraphrasing, says, serenity, I think it says, peace and serenity will have meaning to us as we allow our lives and the lives of those we love to flow day by day with God's ease, balance, and grace. And I can tell you that my life had absolutely no ease, balance, or grace when I got here. And thanks to this program and sponsorship and the God of my understanding and all of you, the fact that that promise and so many more, sometimes quickly and sometimes slowly, have come true in my life is a miracle for which I will be forever grateful. Thanks so much for letting me share.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to close the